and our very special guest, Brett. I'm going to ask you to say your last name, Brett, so I don't mess it up. Brett's joining us from England, and I met Brett for the first time this last Tuesday at the Solution Club at the beginning of the New World, and was totally blown away. And so Brett is about to blow you away. So fasten your seatbelts. Shiloh, pour that extra cup of coffee because we are about to get collectively blown away. And so Brett, I'm going to let you, just so I don't muck it up. I mean, what you're doing is just so amazingly rich. I don't want to even try to encapsulate it myself. Normally I would do that, but you're special. So I'm going to, in addition to letting you pronounce your own last name, I'm going to let you share what you do and just how amazing what you are is. Turn it over and welcome wholeheartedly, Brett. Welcome, Brett. Take it away.
Thank you for the lovely and generous and enthusiastic introduction. I feel like I have something to live up to now. Very exciting. Yeah, my last name, coming from the .bong guy, I mean, come on, greatest thing ever. I'm still buzzing off that whole PR thing you shared with us. So yeah, my last name is Warshawski, and I'm currently, living in England in the Northeast with my wife and her family at the moment. We have a spiritual marriage, not green cards in either of our countries. I'm from New Jersey originally, so we have to go with the visa flow and resource flow and all those kind of things. I'm currently here for a couple more months maybe.
I would say it's really mostly up to you. And I just want to mention very briefly, Brett, I think you're one of those people who I meet from time to time who is just insanely brilliant and creative, but does not have a proportional ego to match. And that is such a beautiful combination. So just know, Brett, I just know that you are loved and you are appreciated to just infinitely, and just be yourself. So just let us know, hey guys, I want to talk for the next 20 minutes. Please, save your questions, or if you want people to jump in with questions as you go, you set the stage. The next 2 hours are really blocked off for this conversation where you are our resident celebrity.
All right, thank you for the amazing reflection. That's what better compliment could I receive than that, Jamen? Thank you. Thanks. It means a lot. So after you asked me, Jamen, the other, whatever, it was 2 days ago, to come by today and talk a little bit, I started thinking, like, one of my non-superpowers is graphic design and PowerPoints and all that. So, but I went into Google Slides and I thought, I wonder if I could put together a bunch of images that will help me stay kind of on point in telling a story. And I know you wanted some people to see screenshots of some of the socio-technology we're working on. So I thought I could do that. And I always like to try to do something I've never done live. So that's always fun. So I did create like these slides. I think I'll just use them as talking points. And you'll see some of the tech and screenshots, which I'll describe more thoroughly through question and answering and other stuff. I'm going to probably rush through this a little because it's not like something I prepared or my big TED thing that I have refined. It's really the first time I've ever tried even doing this. So I might just rush through it. Some of them may make more or less sense, everybody. I'm sure it'll be fine. I have basically as a forenote, our prototype socio-technology that we normally play with is not up and running. So in order to make up for that, like I can show like a couple 3-minute like crappy use case videos I made once, and so you can at least see what I'm talking about in a video thing. So they're not like 10 minutes long. I think it's probably feasible to show them. And if people are bored, well, I guess they're bored. So thank you everyone for showing up and being open to letting me share like this. I'm mostly interested in conversation and inquiry. That's my favorite thing to do. So I'm super looking forward to that part, but I guess it's probably good to do this opening thing so you have some kind of context and what we might want to talk about. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of an icebreaker, kind of from the who am I perspective. So my wife made this for me last year. I'm 45 now, and when I was 19, I had what's called a psychotic break in the Western medicine theory and spiritual emergency by transpersonalists. And I guess from an indigenous perspective, training to become a shaman. But anyway, I was in the Western system and ended up in the psychiatric wards, and it's part of my story, which I could share throughout or other times. But so I've been kind of out of the matrix or out of mainstream since I was 19. And my primary vocation, I like the word vocation, has been self inquiry. Um, up until maybe the last few years, which we'll get into some of the things I've learned to become more a specialist in or things I love to do. But really, my life's work and my primary vocation has been self inquiry. So I've always had trouble getting jobs, or in the mainstream sense, or having a resume that people could understand. So she finally said, "I'll make this for you," and that's pretty. It's pretty accurate. My nickname is Bear. I'm super hairy, so my nickname is Bear. That's why the bear was there. So it's a perfect sort of. That's who I am. I don't when your husband has to get a job and it's not really his thing. So I guess what I'm about to share is what I call my job now. That was the point of it. This is what I do now, what I love to do, and what I'm good at, and I'd like to do little else other than what I love to do. So I'm not going to talk about it now, but this is a screenshot from our prototype software, which is one piece of a bigger pie. We don't just as a note, we don't only care about or make technologies. It's just one piece of the pie that has to be part of a new paradigm, new earth, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about myself, and then I've got my cast of characters here: the visionary troubadour, the cryptopoet, the spiritual philanthropist, my ode to Buckminster Fuller, which is our Bretminster Fuller, which is my fanciest and the one I love the most, and Dr. Banana, who is the new paradigm psychiatrist based on my experiences. So a tiny bit more about me, a theme you're going to find running throughout my life and how I talk and how I present and how I share. And this is in my DNA. This is a screenshot from something called the Gene Keys. I've got this key. For some of you, don't worry if you're not familiar, but some of you are. I have this key 3 times in my chart. So this gift of preservation is about keeping things alive, the rootstock of the past, and building on top of that. And then veneration is knowing your place in the great holarchy of being and understanding how wise and smart or creative or humble you are and how others are and things like that. So I love this veneration. I love the continuity of consciousness. I love where standing on the shoulders of giants. I've got a lot of heroes. Mostly for me, I'm kind of a white middle class American kid, so I have to admit it's pretty limited from the 60s onward or the 40s onward from the Beats. So I have to admit it's pretty narrow altogether. So I'm really big on this veneration and preservation. And preservation is also a lot like synergy, really. It's like and taking all these things and putting them together. So in that vein, this slide comes from one of our pitch decks. That's Barbara Marks Hubbard down there. We lived with her during our project time. She recently passed away last year and learned a lot from her. And just to, again, reinforce that I believe I completely stand on the shoulders of giants and now with other giants on the shoulders of each other. I don't really know how much is original. As Bono said, all poets are thieves, and I probably steal a heck of a lot of things. So it's really important to know that most of the work we do, a lot of it's sort of original in a sense from our lens, our novel, but really there's so many people doing the same thing, getting the same downloads from slightly different angles. So I always like to really ground that and make it clear that that's where I'm coming from. And yes, we've got some pretty cool original ideas per se too, but really it's all about this veneration for me in a sense. So also part of my DNA is something called the 7 S's of co-creation, which Barbara passed along. So Barbara's written and done a lot of work. So this idea of preservation is like, what are some of the key pieces, despite thousands of pages of writing and all the talk she's done? So for me, the 7 S's of co-creation is one of those pieces. It's kind of like my values, to be honest. It's words like syntony, synergy, synchronicity, supersex, syntropy, spontaneity, self-creativity. This is kind of how I operate in the world, and I'll share this another time and people can check it out. So it's, again, another part of my DNA, and it's another screenshot from the technology. And then the Brett character, the main character, I think really I see myself as a gonzo journalist, which is a term coined by Hunter S. Thompson, I guess in the 70s, it must be the early 70s. And a gonzo journalist is basically speaking and writing and narrating without claims of objectivity as being part of the first person narrative. So that's me. I'm not claiming to be objective. I'm claiming to be in the story, part of the story, and telling the story. I like being different and maverick and wild and outside the box completely. So I kind of see myself, one of my passions is just to be like a new paradigm gonzo journalist, I would say. Um, and there's one of my favorite quotes by Hunter S. Thompson, which to me is the story. When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. So if I had to give a tagline, now all of America and the world wouldn't maybe like this, but for the meta modernists and the creatives of us, to me, this defines all of us and defines like the mission. So that's how I see myself, and to some degree in it. And it's time to turn pro, basically. And this is one more quote I saw someone put out, which is also to me part of this story that we're telling here. And I'll just read it real quick. A visionary leader is the person who sees the unfolding of a future story that others, at best, merely dream of. They become the story through intention, action, and devotion to a new reality. And again, I feel like it's something most of us can identify with. We're not just going to dream this thing up, this new thing up. We're going to become it. Again, gonzo journalism. We're going to become this story through intention and action and devotion, which I love as a word. I love the word devotion because that's been keeping us going to a great degree. Part of my story is occupying the noosphere. The noosphere started in the 20s. A few different people coined it. It's sort of the thinking layer of the Earth, like the hydrosphere, the biosphere, the noosphere. There's a few different definitions of it. I use a slightly different definition. Um, my introduction into kind of activism came late in my life. I was sort of a little bit of a late bloomer from this mental health experience. So I attended some of Occupy in 2011 in Manhattan. I'm from New Jersey. And 2011 is like 2011 is a demarcation point for me, like of a new journey. So for me, the 60s and Occupy and existential rebellion is all about occupying the noosphere. This is how we don't fight the existing reality. We create new models that make everything else obsolete by occupying the imaginal realm, the thinking layer of existence, of consciousness. And a lot of people don't understand, and this is my perspective, they think like Occupy went away, or the Blessed Unrest kind of went away, or the 60s went away. But for me, we've all learned big lessons, different age groups here. My big lesson was finally like, Occupy was like getting the point of the Federal Reserve, and I'm not going to get into conspiracy stuff, just the facts of debt-based money and the Federal Reserve and all that other stuff. And it was like, oh shit, we can no longer go to the governments, like going to the White House, even for me, existential rebellion, all that stuff's not going to cut it. So I think a lot of us went underground, let's say mycelial network style, and we're like, oh yeah, it's time to create the new models, and let's just forget about asking the government or the religions or the politics to change something for us. We have to be responsible for the changes we want to make. So for me, this is kind of the subtitle. We're occupying the noosphere. That's part of my story. And as a personality, like I said, I believe in the preposterous. This is a quote from this guy, Joseph Voros. He's got this light cone here. Okay, yep. So preposterous is just a word I love. I like the idea of being preposterous, just the way it rolls off the tongue. Uh, there's a quote from Russell Brand: total revolution of consciousness and our entire social, political, and economic system is what interests me, but that's not on the ballot. He's right. It's not on the ballot. It's not in, we can't solve the problems from the same level of consciousness that created them. So how, it's just not, it's never going to be on the ballot unless we put it on the ballot per se. I don't even think we'll have to put it on the ballot personally. We'll just create something new, but where there are no ballots, but we'll find out, I guess. I think I'm going to play this just to break up me talking. This is a 3-minute video that artistically documents an experience I was part of 3 years ago in Rotterdam, where we had something called Synergy Hub 1.0 experiment, where one of our friends basically talked his way into us babysitting an old elderly care home, 30,000 square meters. It had a church, it had a kitchen, it had a stage area. It had 6 floors of living space, and we got to basically occupy one floor with 30 or 40 of us living there all the time, and people coming through. In Rotterdam, like the tram was right outside. There was a park across the street, and we basically were gifted this space. We didn't have to pay the bills, the Wi-Fi or heating. Our friend managed to like make things work, and because he was really interested in the resource-based economy and he saw the value in what we were trying to bring with social operating systems and technologies to do that, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just an amazing, like, 16 months experiment where we learned a heck of a lot about what it means to follow your passion or your bliss, and also some of the downfalls of that. As sort of anthropologist, it's not just so simple as being free to follow your passion. For example, a lot of people don't know what to do when there's no hierarchy, right? Like, we're all learning. It's about deprogramming on so many levels, even the most free of us, and myself included, always. You learn new things when you have more freedom, let's say, or more open spaces. So it was a very super interesting experiment. And I think this video is kind of fun. I think you guys will enjoy it. So I'm just going to go for it. It also has clips of our technology and everything.
So rock on. We've all got our Bic lighters lit. Take your time, Brett. In fact, it's nice to take a break from drinking from the fire hose of
That's cool. Yeah, all right. Oh, bandwidth. We'll give it a shot, another shot. Oh, one more 10, then I'll get rid of it.
Oh no, it's fine. Just let it go.
That's not a bomb. Those are ether mining equipment. I'll stop it on solution there in Jamin's honor. It's just a few more seconds that the video went on like that.
Thank you, Brett.
All right. So Just as a side note, I'll come back to it. The last bit you're seeing of that spinning ball and the nodes, that's an alternate visualization of the database of the prototype that I'll share in a little bit. So it's important to have different ways of visualizing the same data. So I'll get back to that. So that was our awesome experiment. For me, I get the chills every time I see that video. I love Chris's music and his artistic hyperspeed stuff and all that subliminal stuff, like obsolete government, new map, Polonic map. It's like I'm digging that. I still dig it. I have to say, after all this time. His version was 8 minutes long. I made a smaller version of it. All right.
I would love if at some point you share the link to that video in the chat, because
yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah, right on. I will. All right, I'm just getting back. Preposterous. Absolutely. New paradigm. All right, so we're back to, that's sort of a lot about Brett Warshawski, you know, the guy on the birth certificate, gonzo journalist, veneration, preservation, the synergy hub, and my path, and some of the mental health stuff. And here's some of my other characters. There's the visionary troubadour, the crypto poet, spiritual philanthropist, Buckminster Fuller, and Dr. Banana, as I mentioned. And this is, again, a screenshot from our prototype, just showing that you might have one central sovereign ID. We called it a me holon. I'll explain holons later for other people. And then we might have sub-characters, you know? So I like to think of this, for those who are into tech, as a reversal of the Sybil attack. So instead of worrying about multiple personalities, we'll just have multiple personalities, and every one of them can have a vote. Maybe. All right, so visionary troubadour, this is the way I've been living. I love this description. I met a guy who sort of mentored me in 2010, and I'll share this another time. I just kind of want to read it quickly because for me it's absolutely beautiful, and it's what I've been trying to embody and wanting to expand, and that is, a visionary troubadour lives abundantly and with ease in an economy of gifting and receiving, in an ecosystem where all are cared for, where individuals and all of life are honored, often in paradise locations that others only dream they can visit someday. They belong to deep and rich, high-trust communities of generosity, often around the world. They're always welcome. They seldom pay for housing, travel, coaching, and education, food. They live a life of rich connection, high adventure, and constant evolution. The world is their home. Their past, their gifts, and their skills are many and varied, and they often give freely, pollinating the world with visions and ideas born of their hearts, with healing and love. So that, to me, is just absolutely beautiful, and I've always loved it and still do love it. And I welcome everyone to consider themselves a visionary troubadour. I guarantee you've all been doing very similar things. I got to change the picture. My other avatar, Cryptopoet, a lot of my friends know me as. I've defined a Cryptopoet as an avatar with special powers of imagination and expression who openly shares the most hidden information in existence. I often talk in riddles or write Facebook poems that are sort of like, I don't know, James Joyce meets Robert Anton Wilson, so maybe one person out of a million understands about 1/10 of what I'm saying. But I can guarantee you 100 years from now or 20 years from now, it will be looked back as some version of vision, prophecy, whatever. Not because I'm really a prophet, mostly because we're going to learn to co-create the future rather than being its victims, as Bucky Fuller said. I don't have a picture, so spiritual philanthropy. This is just an excerpt. I'm not going to read this. This is my life's work. In the gene keys, for example, you have a life's work and a life's purpose. Your life's work is more what you do outer, actively in the world. In 2011, I started talking about this. Spiritual philanthropy is simply the love of love, whereas philanthropy is the love of humanity. Spiritual philanthropy is about the ability to share many different things and invest into really consciousness itself, or the ground of being or love, and understanding that when we invest ourselves that way, everything will be produced. So we want a realization of our I rather than ROI, a return on. We want a realization of our deepest self, our deepest I, which is also part of the bigger I in a holographic sense. So spiritual philanthropy is very based on holographic type principles. And we've been living this way. It's a big part of our projects and our work that I'll be sharing. And from one little slice of that level of money and philanthropy, rather, because spiritual philanthropy is not about traditional philanthropy of money, it's one piece of that. our project has received over about 300,000 in cash. And when I added up the Synergy Hub and all those gifts and what we would have paid for that kind of space, I think our project has probably received over 10 million at least in kind healing and travel. And I got married at one of these events, a spontaneous wedding I had. So like we've done pretty well for ourselves on this gift paradigm ethos and spiritual philanthropy. Of course, it's foreign to most people. They're not comfortable, with the word spiritual, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if it'll be called that 100 years from now, but I do believe we can't get through the eye of the needle without a gift paradigm or a spiritual philanthropy as a civilization. So it's been working for us. I just want to scale it up, really. Like, where's the next million, billion, the next building, the next set of buildings that are all gifted to the thing? And then there's Dr. Banana, who is a response to being instituted in the psychiatric ward. My mission is to transform perceived mental illness into a blessing. I purposefully use perceived mental illness because obviously semantics matter. There's really no such thing as mental illness if I was going to be practical about it, because it's a whole system. Your whole body is working together. It's not just serotonin in your brain. And just because you might see things or feel depressed or hear voices and it manifests that way, it doesn't make it a mental illness. It's a body, it's a whole system's dis-ease that's manifesting that way. And clearly, when you call something an illness and pathologize experience, we've already gone down the rabbit hole of having to fix it and deal with it and medicate it, et cetera, et cetera. So Dr. Banana is sort of my homage to Patch Adams, really. He's kind of a hero. And I got to meet him. He's actually in person equally as amazing as you might think. He's one of those people that seems to be the kind of person you see in print or on video. He felt really consistent with that kind of the image of Patch Adams. This was another thing. Okay, so my favorite character is probably our Buckminster Fuller. For me, in my little pride moment, I was like, this is the coolest name I've ever come up with in my preservation meme thing. I just love that he was called Buckminster Fuller, and I came up with Buckminster Fuller because I'm so full of it, obviously. And this graphic somebody created for me, so there's Buckminster Fuller with the preposterous. And this is the story from this point on that Buckminster Fuller is sort of the gonzo journalist for everything else I'm about to share, and kind of maybe why we're even here today in a sense. But everybody should call me Brett. I don't go by like changing my names and all that. I'm just having fun. And Buckminster Fuller is working on a novel, Domesticated Primates Win the Game. The story for me is called transmedium production. What we're up to now is not transmedia, although transmedium is plural singular, but the medium is the message, et cetera, et cetera. There's different mediums. We're all mediums here for a message. Nanotechnology is a medium. Film is a medium. So it's not just transmedia like internet and blogs and emails. I want to go into transmedium production, where everything is a piece of the production. So again, I move at pi rate. You can figure that out for yourself. And I like to create memes. So where are we going? What is this new story for me? This is what we'll get into now, some of the tech and the platform I'm part of. So existential rebellion is my little thing. It's not like part of our platform. It makes me laugh. But really, turn on, tune in, co-create, right? That came from Timothy Leary. He said, turn on, tune in, drop out. I've changed it to turn on, tune in, co-create. So co-creation is the thing to tune into and turn on to in our world, especially with our project and the new story for me. And this is Bucky Fuller. He said, we're called to be the architects of the future, not its victims. So of course, I just had to change it a little bit we're called to be co-creators of the future and not its victims. Powerful, powerful statement in my mind. Powerful, powerful statement. So what am I doing now, and how does this all relate? The project I'm part of is a loose word, project. It's very hard. Someone said it's really a whole systems innovation. Is it a collective? Is it a this? Is that? It's kind of loosely a lot of things in a way. But the 5 core people who are catalyzing our work are called together. And the social movement and the social body of our global organism, which I'll get to share a little bit about, is we use the word together as the name of the social movement. Of course, there's a quote by William Blake, which a lot of you probably have heard before, from one of his poems, and I'll skip that for now. So together is the name of our collective and the social movement aspect of what we do. And I also always like to make sure everyone sees some of the people. So some of these people in this photo are the core co-creators. And also the gentleman in the white shirt with the kind of scarf thing on, his name is Raj, and he was one of our early spiritual philanthropists who really showed up and helped us get to Mexico and live there for a year. My wife is right there next to him, sort of peeking in. Chris, who's created all the tech from the zeros and one perspective, is in the back, the taller guy, I guess, with the short hair and the mustache. Devora is in the middle there, looking all goddessy, red hair, like belongs in the forest there. And Ansan is the one sitting next to the woman in green. And everyone else there is someone who's sort of in our network or community, by the way. Oh, and Mona's next to Chris. Mona's a core member. Anyway, it's nice to see some of the people that are part of the core. And that's my wife, who makes everything. It sounds all sappy, but everything has been possible for me in my personal life because of her. Like, she chose to love me before I turned the corner. She's my heart and soul, and she's more of the systems architect, meta architect brains behind that, some of the outfit, along with. So I'm on the core team now with 4 women and just me, by the way, which is also, again, super important for the feminine principle and women in technology. Like, our women may not be the actual coders, but they're going to be influential in a technologically influenced project. So to have 4 women in the core, that's super. It's not something to be taken lightly eventually. It's maybe not mean a lot of people out there, but when we get to the mark, and by marketing, I mean, like Jamen, like you were saying, like the telling of the story and the expression of these things, it's going to be really great that was the case. So her name's Andrea, and sometimes she's called Tan, Tan. All right, so this is what we're doing. We're creating something we call the Together Life System. The Together Life System is a whole systems innovation with different pieces that make up the whole. Every little piece is really an innovation itself, which again, Jamin, goes back to a lot of what you've shared about having to innovate in all those different sectors in order to actually create a new story and a whole system shift. So we've been lightly like alpha versions of many different things rather than full on creating one type of application or one type of process or one type of model. We've chosen to dip our toes into many things and specialize in trying to co-create the whole in a way, or to create a blueprint that can then people can come along, which I'll share more about, and now actually co-create the thing more than anything we've ever even come close to doing. So one of the missions is to take synergistic co-creation to scale of the Together Life System. Synergistic co-creation, we use the word specifically just because it's more than just co-creation that maybe people are throwing around these days, or the business definition of co-creation. And if you look up in Wiki, there's actually a business definition for Wiki. So synergistic co-creation, a little bit different. This is a model looking at 12 sectors. Barbara Marx Hubbard's Wheel of Co-Creation we use as inspiration. And what we're looking at doing is we've got applications, basically, social and then digital, for things like governance, sharing IP, sharing resources, resolving conflict, synergizing processes, models. All these things will be applications that express themselves in technology. We call them synapses, right? Synergistic applications. So the global brain and the global nervous system has to have synapses. Obviously, the global body, they're everywhere in our body, synapses, and chemicals. And we look a lot at Chinese medicine and biomimicry. So that's what we've been looking at. We've been trying to create all these pieces, and we always try to experiment with them on ourselves first. There's really no just making something up around here. Like, we have an idea of how we want to share money and resources, so we do it. Yes, it's only within 5 or 6 people, or sometimes 8 or 9, but it's still, we're doing the experiment the best we can in that little group. So that's what we're up to, creating a whole system that includes a social body and a movement, and therefore art and marketing and technology and healing and everything under the sun. I mean, it's literally a whole system. And there's a street sign in California somewhere. So we use the concept of holons a lot. Holon was coined by a guy named Arthur Kessler, probably the late 60s. You have to all forgive me with some dates and things like that. He was a cyberneticist and systems theorist, et cetera, et cetera. He wrote a book, I think, called Ghost in the Machine. And he basically looked around in the world and thought, wait a second, everything seems to be a whole in itself and a part of something else, like a subsystem or a whole greater system, or even synergy, with the Vesica Pisces. And he's like, wait a second, if I'm honest, what am I looking at? A bunch of wholes and parts. So he made up the word holon. Beautiful. So holons became used in some science, system sciences. Ken Wilber has made them famous from the integral perspective, using the idea of holons. I would say we're not using the idea of holons in a one-to-one isomorphic way, like in the most, standard scientific way. We're using that as an idea, as a lens, as a meme, and things like that. So for us, basically, Web 3.0 equals Earth 3.0. That's why they're happening together, a new internet and a new Earth. And I love this personally. We went from flat to round to holonic. So for us, it's about this holonic perception. And I'll just read that real quick. The Together Life System isn't just a digital technology. It's a new social design. When we perceive the planet through holons, we experience it entirely differently. The shift is akin to the transition that was made when we started to see the world as round instead of flat. Using holons is a technical shift and a perceptual shift. It's a paradigm shift. And then Terence McKenna actually did not say this, in case anyone's wondering, but I made this I made this graphic up because I thought it was fun. Because there's a famous saying that the map is not the territory, that was created by a semanticist in I think the 20s, Alfred Korzybski, which was he was a leading pioneer in semantics and logic, which is way too deep for me. But it's a very beautiful metaphor model. The map is not the territory, that's been used in many disciplines and religions and spiritual spaces, because it's basically saying what we see is different. It's going through our nervous system. Things are being filtered, truth as it is, like the Matrix. The white room is being filtered through our personalities and our perceptions and our nervous systems. So the map is not the territory. Or you can't eat a menu that says hamburger, right? The hamburger says there's a menu on it, but you can't eat the menu. So the map's not the territory is very famous. It's very related to our socio-technologies in a way, and why the thing was called New Map originally, because it's mapping your perceptions of reality compared to reality itself. And just understanding that is a positive and a leap of imagination, really. So ironically, potentially New Map is the territory because it's subjectivity and it's perception, and it's not we don't have to claim the absolute truth anymore. So technically it may be the territory. I always had fun with that. So it's not a metaphor. So this is a screenshot. And again, I've got some videos and other screenshots I can share. That's got a bunch of different screenshots of some of this New Map prototype. So I'll share a little bit about that. New Map was first created by a guy named Chris Larcombe that my wife, Andrea, and I met in January 2013, when Andrea, I, and Chris kind of set off on this gift paradigm adventure together with the three of us. At that point, it didn't look like this. It was very much scaled back. He was 2 years into a PhD for robotics / AI, but had dropped out of school, kind of, started watching Zeitgeist. And I've got a video of him doing a New Map thing I'll share as well, Nolan, that people would like to see. He was originally very inspired by the resource-based economy, the Zeitgeist movies, the Venus Project, and had some awakening moments, at festivals and psychedelics and things like that. And was like, obviously didn't want to be in the ivory tower of academics anymore, where they own all of your work and they don't really care about you, et cetera, et cetera. So his first inclination was, we almost already have the conditions for a resource-based economy. If you've got free cycle and couch surfing and all these different databases and applications where people are sharing, even unconditionally, but they're in different databases and they're not talking to each other. So the first thing he wanted to do was create a meta type platform where all of these databases wouldn't be siloed. So I think he made his biggest leap was this holonic idea, this holonic database, just thinking in holons. So I think some of the most major leaps in science, despite all the sophistication later, I think, and he wasn't so much into Ken Wilber or holons from Kessler. He saw the idea, I think, somewhere and used it. And I think that was a massive conceptual leap, which inspired a lot, through the years. So he started that. He built the first version of it. Andrea and I came along and we started thinking more of the user applications. And we started out on this journey wanting to basically create like a co-creation platform. It was around that time, 2013 or 14, we met a woman named Sherry Herndon, who introduced us to Bar Marx Hubbard. So then we got more influence about co-creation itself. What does that really mean? You can imagine when we first started, we thought we might just start a business and like create a platform. And, 7 years later, it's like, no, we're creating a new civilization and a new reality. And it's way bigger than we even thought, despite how ambitious we might have even been. So I'll do props to Chris for starting that, and we're carrying it forward. As a side note, let me go back. As a side note, we're going through some organizational changes and interpersonal changes at the moment. So we might change names and rebrand some things, and just it's kind of time for the three of us to evolve ourselves and let some things die and let other things grow. I think even for me personally, being part of this group and the Live Hope crowd and all the other things we're working on, and Mona and Ansan are in Egypt, our other two members with Deborah now, they're working on some things. So there's just a time of rebirth in our space a little bit. And Chris may kind of go off a little bit and do more futuristic R&D, while Andrea and myself continue stewarding this version that you're going to see and you have been seeing, and try to take it to more of its fulfillment, rather than also just always do R&D. Chris has got a major gift and passion for always pushing the envelope and doing the next thing and the next thing, rather than finishing one thing at a time, which is really his gift, rather than something to get down about. This is the global wheel of co-creation in NewMap. It would have been real time if I could have showed you the prototype, which is down at the moment. But I just wanted to show, Jamen, this was for you, because for me, like, this is it. Like, we're mapping, here's all the global sectors with all the projects within them, and all those conversations would be categorized in there, and the golden innovations, like once somebody comes up with an innovation, it becomes a golden innovation. How do they all interact? The middle group is called the community of pioneering souls. And for us in our architecture, that's actually organizational, not just technological. So there's a function in the global body, in the system, that actually its mission and function is to coordinate and collaborate and synergize the different people and help them work together, help them get over things together, help them grow together, et cetera, et cetera. It's also just a nice graphic. This was the 3D visualization. So the database can be visualized in the future in a zillion different ways. This was like, Chris did this in 5 minutes, but it was just to show that, like, so those are all the holons in the database, that people's passions, I say mapped, it's not really a mind map, it's really a inputting data into the database, but it also is a mapping tool, quote unquote. You can use it to map things, but really it's a database, per se. And that's a couple of videos. Let me just stop my screen share. Okay, so at this point, I could show a couple more 3-minute videos of NewMap prototype, like in action. So you just literally see it physically, and some screen grabs I have. Or I could we could have a little conversation first. Does anyone what's everyone's energy like? Like, is there any inspirations? What are?
Yeah, Shiloh, go ahead.
Hi, Brett. Thank you so much. I have so many connections with your story. I'll just try to summarize. One thing, I had this grand vision of the future, and it was back in 2000. And it was during a mental break. So I don't really feel like I created it. It came to me. That's something I don't normally share because it's hard to share that. But anyway, in my vision, I see hubs. I love that you did a practice hub. It sounds like it's more technical based because you're creating one thing, but in my vision, actual community hubs that are like neutral centers. I call them hubs because I think of them as humanitarian. Anyway, I think of them as a physical receptor for our like global neural network in the real world of centers where we come together and do exactly these things that you're talking about. Like, you're creating this mind and thinking apparatus of what I pictured in the real world, which was really great. And I did share it with Barbara Marks Hubbard and her group about 15 years ago, so quite a while ago. And I love how it came together in the circles and like pieces of the pie. And it's mind-blowing. I love it. I love that just how like collective consciousness works with or without us knowing it. And another part I wanted to say just really quickly, these hubs in the physical world are, in my vision, were like centers, but also they're like routes for your, what did you call it? Your visionary troubadour?
Mm-hmm.
Troubadour? Where you travel around the world. You have places that you actually can go. They're set up for people, musicians coming through. It's just like this global network for real connection, and also taking responsibility back at the locations that you're at, but then being able to spread those things in a physical, it's just a more physical experience. But I just wanted to say how beautiful it is that we're all interrelating these great visions. And that's it. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing, and I'm excited to hear more.
Thanks, Shiloh. Anyone else like to chip in?
I'll hop in real quick there. Brett, how you doing? I just met you the other day. I'm just going to throw in a little, as I call it, manifesting into visible appearance, a la Jamen and I meeting 4 months ago as these two forces like a Tai Chi symbol. And I see now the third force has entered the scenario, which means we're going to be unstoppable. And the 10,000 things are going to be created all of the beginning of the Tao Te Ching. The one created the two, created the three, created the 10,000 things. So welcome into this space. I can't wait to see how this rips open, because you got a spirit like me, and you got a creative visionary capacity like Jamen, and you're kind of like the neutralizing force between the two. So this is going to open crazy. I can't wait. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 10,000. That I would qualify that as pyrate.
Mm-hmm. That's how it works, baby.
Anyone else like to share anything? Okay, I'll take that as a no, and I'll share a little bit more. One thing I didn't share in the slides, I'm just going to put my screen share back on while I'm talking, is I'm just going to, sorry. Is my screen share working again?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So one thing I kind of skipped over that I just wanted to share real quick, I shared it the other day in the when I was with Jamen and the community here for the first time, is that the Together Life system is founded on something we call organomics, right, instead of economics. And we're really interested in how we all do things compared to what we do, how we go about producing innovations, how we go about producing communities, how we go about life, not just what is the just ends justifying the means, etc. So my wife wrote a beautiful little PDF I'll share as well in some place where everyone can access these things about organomics on the vision level. And I'd really like to share that in honor of her, number one. And just to, again, presence that for us, it's super important in this new reality, at least that we're creating, to be organomic, and there's values there, like not wasting things. It's very much based, again, Dharmendra, is that how I would pronounce your name? Is that right, James? Dharmendra? Yeah, she's been studying Chinese medicine the past 2 years for her own health concerns. So that came into the architecture, and the systems thinking now. So it's all about the flows of the energies, the flows of the things. So I coined a word based on holons, right? And this is another fun piece, and I'll just skip, called holonic cryptocurrencies. So there's a group called Metacurrency, and they're behind Holochain, and they coined a term called currency, CURRENT -SEE, right? Currency, seeing the flows, going from currency is just money as fiat into actual currency. So for me and our system, I'm hoping it ends up being where every piece of data that is inputted is a holonic cryptocurrency, whether it's an intention, a resource, a vision, a passion, a skill, an organization. These are all holonic cryptocurrencies that we can use to manage and measure and react and respond to the flow. It's kind of like Bucky Fuller saying he created Dymaxion map to watch trends and resources and things. So we're just taking that to like the nth level, like the super nth level. Also for me, it's what leads to a gift paradigm and makes money obsolete, not because money's bad, but it's because we've actually created something finally that's just so much more kick-ass and more fun that it's just a natural thing for it to do. So it looks like my, I'm just going to stop my screen. Oh, sorry. Technical issues. So yeah, so orgonomics is like a foundation piece, at least theoretically and all that, and how we're approaching what we do. I'm just fidgeting with this presentation thing. It doesn't seem to want to move.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
this
Melissa has a question.
is okay. Melissa, go ahead.
Yeah. What I find really interesting about that, Brett, is that people can hoard money, but you can't hoard energy. You can't hoard flow. And so part of the problem we're facing right now is people have gotten into addictive behavior with currencies, you know, money, currencies, and things. So in a way, this frees us from that addiction when you get into the current seas, you know, the flow of energy, which flows through everything. So it seems to me that this will free us big time from hoarding.
Yeah, right on. Anyone else like to relate or share?
I just want to second what Melissa said. It's kind of like, you know, when I've suffered from different forms of addiction, whenever I'm just awash in love and co-creativity, I easily lose my attachment to whatever I was addicted to, whether it's money or a substance or an experience or whatever. So I just want to second that. I also want to welcome the folks who've joined recently. Jeff, welcome Jeff. Super excited you're here. Le Maxel, however it's pronounced. And feel free to introduce yourselves and say hello. We're kind of flowing here. Back to you, Brett.
Cool. So let's see if this is working again. So this one's for Jamen as well. I thought of you, and I had to put it in there. I don't know why. It made me think of you from the other day.
Thank you. Awesome.
And we must remember to have fun. Gonzo journalism, co-creation, celebration. Ironically, my life's purpose in the Gene Keys is celebration. So I'm all about celebrating and flowing and realizing this stuff. And this is my wife's niece. I always love that picture. So you will be synergized. Seriousness is futile. And in terms of currencies and money and tokens, I don't have much interest in cryptocurrencies as they exist or DAOs. Tokens are futile to me. For me, the earth will be colonized, right? When we colonize the earth, that's not about colonizing. Colonizing is about parts and wholes, sovereignty, co-creativity, interconnection, interdependence. And that's the Brett, not the Borg. So the end of that story, just to bring it back, like, fuck yeah, let's occupy the noosphere. And this was a clip from the last scene of the movie Tomorrowland, which I absolutely love. And just so it's on video, I plan on making the sequel to this in my own way, because I love the ending, basically taking the ending of this movie and seeing what would happen from a different lens. So I'm not going to play the video here because of the issue with the this thing. So that's all my slides. I've got tons of screen grabs of this new map prototype that I can share, or a couple more 3-minute videos so people can see it. Is that something that we should do? Like, or what do you think?
I think it's really up to you, Brett.
Okay.
I appreciate that you paused to let people comment. And I think it was Lawrence who I was trying to acknowledge a moment ago. Anyway, welcome everyone. So excited to see everyone here. Back to you, Brett.
Well, let's see. Does anybody have the ability to say hi that just checked in? You want to just say hi? Or I'll carry on in another 60 seconds if not. But like, let's just, if anyone wants to say hello or something, I'll give you the floor here for a second. Or I'll just assume you're driving or something and it's just not easy for you to do it. Or you're introverted. All right. So I'm just going to go seek out a couple of pieces on the other channel. And again, welcome someone. If anyone has a relate or wants to just fill the space, or we could have silence too, that's fine.
I just want to say real quick, Brett, that it's synchronicity, another synchronicity. So you're a 4232 in your Sun Earth on your personality side, from what I gather you saying.
I think I'm terrible with the
Well,
astrology side.
celebration is the 42nd if that's your life work. Or the siddha. That's
yeah.
the siddha. That's the siddha
Yeah.
celebration. Yeah.
That's my life's purpose on the bottom.
Oh, on the bottom. Well, that's
Yeah.
even better. It's funny because both my nodes on my personality side are the 3242. So we were destined.
Wow.
Because you're in my environment or my perspective. So that your purpose. So natural connect there. I like it. I love it when it corresponds in the science, you know, the gene keys, the human design. It's nice.
That's amazing that we have that similarity. All right, let's see. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to show this Tomorrowland video. So we'll bring it back to another like inspirational 2-minute message from our collective sponsors or something like that. So I'm just going to hit the share screen again. Jamen, can you mute everyone, please?
Yeah, no problem. I'll see if everyone can mute themselves. That's ideal, and I'll do my best to mute those who need to be muted.
Cool. Do you got the screen share?
Yeah, we see it. We see it.
Oh, I'm going back and forth. Hold on, I'm going to screen share it again. I don't know if I did the the sound thing. Okay, yeah, it's there. That's all right. This is the end scene of a movie called Tomorrowland that was with George Clooney and had the Tesla Tower, etc. in it.
Are much more than that too. So, go out there and do what you would have done. Find the ones who haven't given up. They're the future.
Cool. So, am I back on audio? Yeah. Right.
You're back. You're back.
Yeah. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I personally love it. What I love about that number one is that I feel it's sincere in the sense of about cross-cultural, cross-age. The thing that we're all about to do needs everybody. Everybody, as Barbara taught us in some senses, everyone's required. Everyone's needed. Every skill set, every experience, all the wisdom, collective intelligence, right? Radical collective intelligence also means appreciating not just mental capacities, but experiential capacities and lifetime capacities and autistic capacities, whatever it is. So Everyone's needed. I love how they all end up in a crop circle, basically, in the end. But so, and also, Jamin, from the marketing, because I want to tap into you, bro, like in the future, like, because I love the marketing and the memes and the words.
Yeah.
Like that for me is the thing, like those tokens, although I said we're not going to tokenize stuff, but like I love that meme of like starting to drop some kind of like thing like that around the planet and getting people, it's like an alternate reality game, you know? Actually, like my greatest dream is really, I would say, in the most thing that's out there that's not novel is an alternate reality game is what we're doing. Like we're really just creating the most massive alternate reality game that probably ever existed on one level. It's one way to put it. But I want to have fun. I want to use laser projection mapping. I want to drop into New York and start broadcasting holons on the buildings without telling anyone. And if they get arrested, who cares? We'll bail them out. We'll have a fund, you know, the bailout fund, you know, for all of the guerrilla ontologists, as Robert Anton Wilson, who's one of my heroes, coined the word guerrilla ontology. Guerrilla ontologists basically jump out of the woodwork in the shadows and create cognitive dissonance. So so I'm really into like moving to the next level of my own artistic expression, I would say, for the good of all, but I want to go next level personally. Like I want to have the impact, the positive impact, and I'll speak for myself. I'm sure other people feel the same. So it's not like ego based, but I do. I want to have more impact. I want to get the solutions going. I don't want to wait much longer per se. I'm with divine timing, so I'm never really out of space, but it's just like, I want to just get to the next thing where we have the resources and the people and we have what we need to actually get on with the implementation of a new paradigm, you know? So yeah, I just love that clip. I like that everyone is needed. Everyone's required, black, white, yellow, whatever, men, women, old, young. That's, for me, that's a super powerful video. Shiloh, Melissa first and then Shiloh.
That's beautiful, Brett. Thank you for sharing that. One thing I've noticed through the art installations, public art installations I've been working on, is that people really want to get involved as well. So I think if there's a way to actually have public or community engagement in those projects, I think that's even more powerful. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh, I love that, Melissa. Two things now that Melissa said that. First, I wanted to say it's pretty synergistic that both your group is called Together and Jubilee's has a group called Together Tech, working on the same things. I love that. And Melissa, I'm so with you. My dream is to actually use art as the means. Like, I've been so isolated by myself, but I'm making all this art all the time. My dream is to go to different communities, share with other people like you in the physical, the idea. I had a dream that I could do a multi-level currency based on sorry, I get so nervous when I start talking. On the MetaCurrency project, I like designed my own currency like for humanitarian back in 2012 based on that. Anyway, it was my dream to go to these communities, give them this actual value system that there is one small part that is tradable, but then there's like the reputation currency within it. So everybody has their own, and they're also like measuring their humanitarian value, measuring their environment with science. And then they take their measurements and they like deposit this information, collective information, into the hubs. And then we start to have a map through this collective intelligence, basically, that we're actually making it visible so we can see where there's pollution in our land. We can see collectively our neighbors, we get together, we plant plants that pull that pollution out of the dirt, we do things to clean the water, and we're recording that at our hubs. So that was my dream, was to be able to go to these communities, all different types of communities, and give them this platform, you know, suggest they start a center that they can meet at, but also give them this type of currency that they could trade parts of it, they could record things and improve upon it, and then it can be shared to the greater public. So I'm totally with you in finding a way to involve the community, finding ways to show them their different types of wealth, like how many trees do you have in on your property?
Shiloh, you froze up for a second there. You're still frozen.
Darn, probably because I was getting too nervous.
And Shiloh,
I'm just gonna stop there.
Shiloh, I love your sharing. So, you know, and also I wanted to say that when we share, see, we're part of a collective now. We're all holding each other, right? So let's lose the old paradigm, like, you know, the binoculars. Hey, it's almost gone. I can see it. Let's lose the old paradigm that each of us has to create some kind of perfect, complete whole-on. And if we don't share a perfectly complete whole-on, then no. Share a tenth of a whole-on, share a portion, share a crumb, share 90% of it, and then just throw it back to the rest of us. And like a beautiful contra dance, you know, we'll fill in. So that, anyway, I just wanted to share that. Please.
And a crazy concept, Shiloh, I'll throw at you is our hearts are all one right now. So just melt yourself into all of our hearts and borrow anybody's voice and skill you want. Believe me, it works. That's what we do in Accelerated Collective Evolution. It's real. So just whether you believe it or not, just trust it and have your intent there. You speak beautifully anyway. I love what you're saying.
Melissa, then James, or is James just giving you a thumbs up? Yeah. Melissa, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Shiloh. I love doing public engagement projects. So, honey, come on aboard and I'll help you get started. So we're a collective now. We get to collaborate and co-create. So you're not alone. Just reach out and we can all help each other get these beautiful projects off the ground together.
Cool. Does anyone like to add anything else before I share a little bit more? James?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to say there. Well, first of all, anyway, great talk there, Brett. I love that. I loved your presentation, and I love the idea and your vision. And just going back to something that you mentioned at the very start of your talk there as well about, you know, us approaching governments for help or anything else like that. I just think it would be a futile exercise now and a waste of our time even to ask anyone who's designed the system to suit the few rather than the many, like to for help to change it. That's just a futile exercise now. We need the help of the people now, and because, as Jamen said last night, we have been deserted, abandoned by our governments, and it is up to the people now to help each other, you know. But take it from that, I'm going to just give a quote. It reminds me of Schopenhauer's quote, because what we're saying here and what the last lady speaking there, I'm sorry I missed her name again, was saying about, you know, she gets a bit nervous and everything. So did I when I started this, and that's a good, you know, that's just a good thing. Nerves, we can all learn to overcome our nerves as long as we continue to talk. It doesn't matter if it's a half a sentence, as Jamen said, as long as the sentence is out there, the words are out there, and as long as the words are out there, somebody can latch onto them and expand on them. Like, so that's what we're here for. And we are the few at the moment. We are the few at the moment. What I'm going to go with Schopenhauer's saying is that all truth, I'm sure some of you know this, all truth goes through three stages. That first, it is ridiculed. Secondly, it is violently opposed. But thirdly, it becomes as self-evident. So as long as we persist here and persist with trying to spread this message and spread this vision, because, you know, we are at the dawning of a new paradigm for humanity, and we just need to push it now and make the masses aware of what's going on. And it's only the people that can solve it. We're no longer dependent on those that are being power. So thank you very much, Brett, and, you know, carry on. Cheers.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it, man. Cool. All right. I'll share a couple more, like 3 to 4 minute clips, and then we can just finish the rest of the hour having conversation, etc. I just want to reaffirm that what I'm showing you is actually a prototype / proof of concept. I also want to reaffirm that it's freaking awesome in a way. And it's also like 1% of what is coming collectively and 1% of what we want to do as we get to doing it. And I also want to reaffirm, because a lot of people come away when I speak thinking they remembering only technology, or thinking we're just building technology, internet technology, I should say. So I want to just reaffirm that I use the word socio-technology, which is really the conversion of social processes and social frameworks with technologies. Also technology, and I'm not really going to quote this the right way, but like the etymology of technology is about craft and skill, and techne means different things. Like other people could probably clarify me, or we could look it up. But so for me, there's spiritual technologies, there's emotional technologies, there's, you know, governance technologies, internet technologies, physics technologies, et cetera, et cetera. We all get that. And it's really about combining all of these technologies as expressions of humanity and consciousness to co-create. So I just want to be sure everyone understands our hearts aren't just about building this internet, new internet. It's like that's one massively important piece of the puzzle that we feel like we have some pieces of, along with a lot of other people. And it's obviously kind of like when the fetus is born, and I think it starts with the heart, maybe, you know, like a global communication system that matches our needs and frequencies is super important. For me, one of the things that is hard at scale non-locally across these time zones and countries is trying to use Slack and Facebook and Asana and Basecamp and all these different things. They don't really match the speed and agility and intention and missions that we're all on. So what we've got to get closer to a almost telepathic co-creative technology, because of course I'm sure we'll all get there eventually without any technology. It wouldn't even surprise me we don't even build half of this stuff, because we just like pop into something else, some of us. But we've got to have this type of technologies with AI, as Jamen said, AI for good, and integrated Zoom video, and this holonic database and different interfaces. This will allow a zillion conversations, and I can't wait. Jamen and I have just met. I mean, we haven't even had a jam session on all the like all the possibilities and stuff. But that's, I think it's just like the SRM for me, James. Like until we have this global communication system, and I'm using that instead of platform or social network, that there's a big piece of scaling and being resilient as a collective, because it allows us to have these zillions of conversations at once and get transcripts and make sure we're all aware somehow. And I think it's going to be fantabulous. So AI wants to put chip in our brains. Well, AI can put that in my pipe and smoke it. There's no chip going in my brain anyway, unless I put it there myself and design it myself with people like Dharmendra and then Melissa and all that. Maybe I'll put it in my brain if I try it. But I'm not putting any Elon Musk chips in my brain or anything like that. I can tell you that much. So, okay, so I'll show you. So I just wanted to make that all clear. The technology is one piece of our puzzle. It's one side of us. It's not our whole offer. It's not the only thing we're about. It's just very easy for people to plug into it and be excited by it and give them a sense of something compared to all the governance and decision-making processes, which are harder to demonstrate, you know? So yeah, okay, I'm just gonna switch to my screen share if anyone wants to relate or share anything, or else just wait a second while I get that set up.
Yeah, real quick, I'll say that what you're going through there and sharing about technology and stuff, Jamen and I and Nolan, at the beginning of all this, when we were just envisioning it, and Jamen said, well, there's three phases we're envisioning here, and so we're in the technology we have now, which is already beautiful based on what you're sharing. But then the step we want to get into with the million conversations at once, the super technology, super intelligence. But then the third thing that you're kind of hinting at, which is where the accelerated collective evolution comes in, because it allows all these synchronicities to happen. And it speeds up everything we're doing so much more quickly than we would normally go about it. So it's already taking what we're envisioning about a new world that's coming and practicing it now. And that's a lot where I'm using the gene keys and stepping it up from what Richard Rudd did into a real life application here and now. And that's why I call it the life codes instead of the gene keys, because it's my version of it. So there is those three phases, and they're all happening now. We're already training the accelerated collective evolution, the third phase now, because all those phases need to be in alignment as we're developing all of it. So they're constantly, like those three forces I talked about, UI and Jamen, this is the way of actually applying it in the three different areas of how we're evolving this communication network in order to accelerate the possibilities of what we want to get done here. So I just wanted to share that real quick.
Cool, thank you, man. It's gonna be a kick-ass time. Okay, so this is a 2-minute video. I was hanging out with the DAOstat crowd in their community. Some of you may or may not be familiar. I won't explain. It's a decentralized autonomous organization type thing, blockchain project. So I was in there learning and testing things and checking out. And they were talking about creating fractal DAOs. So that's the context of the video I was going to make for a couple of people in there. So what you're looking at, again, is the prototype / proof of concept. In the big middle circle is like the main holon viewer, we call it, with other holons. And the right side is the information panel, which is the information related to one of the holons you're looking at. And then underneath the information is like a comments thread, similar to Twitter or Facebook, although there's some differences, which I'll share about as we go along. This is again, what we called our me holon. It's my profile in plain language, and it's got different things in here. Now, depending on what access you have, you would be seeing, when you logged into my me profile, you would be seeing something different, because every holon has its own permission rights and its own, people can edit it or not edit it or see it or not see it. And that's just tip of the iceberg stuff. It's going to get more sophisticated with AI and a larger team. But even in the prototype, it would look different to you depending on who I shared things with. If I shared them publicly to anybody or just certain groups or certain people.
I just
Yep.
want to let you know that on our end, the text is not readable. So if there's
Okay.
really important stuff, you might want to make it explicit. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, man. Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate it. And no, the text is not important here. And the other point I'll bring up here is with these DAOs, the fractal DAOs. In our project, we call our collective an unnameable universal united fractal organism, a UFO, right? So we have some fun because we're a UFO. And really, it's, for me, what goes beyond a DAO. A DAO is a decentralized, autonomous organization. Wonderful, great, not really next level for me personally. So a fractal organism, obviously, it's an organism. It's fractal. It's wholes and parts, and it's united. It's universal. So people will still have their own autonomy because there's many different united fractal organisms. It's kind of a container. It's a framework, right? So every collective that is doing something in our global organism is a united fractal organism as one name, because they're coming together for a shared intention. They're sharing resources. They're co-creating, and that holosphere, that united fractal organism, is also co-creating with other united fractal organisms. The one DAO of DAOs, you might say, is the universal fractal organism. And then there's the unnameable fractal organism, as we might say in Taoist speak, that is not online and it is not named and it doesn't have a holon. And we just know it's there hosting the universal fractal organism. So it kind of relates to David Bohm's work with the implicate order and the hollow movement. So I consider our movement to be a hollow movement for people that want to look up David Bohm's work and try to apply that to social thinking and poetry as well as science. So I'll just show this video so you'll get to see a little bit of the circles and things like that. And the other key point is, I shared this the other week, what you're looking at is a mishmash of 3 different elements. A database, that's pieces of information, just like when you're on a spreadsheet. You're looking at a database, except the database is put in holons per se. So all of the data can be interconnected or linked, or like Russian dolls that can be stacked within each other. So I have a passion, for film, and inside that passion I have another passion for editing, and then I have a skill for cartoon editing, and I have an intention to create a cartoon. So that database can be really linked. It's all one database. So the holons, it's almost like an illusion that they're separate parts, but they are for the sake of currencies and for sharing and things like that. So there's the database. Then there's what's called, and this is for some people, it might be helpful that aren't as familiar with technology. There's the user interface level, the UI level. So you have a spreadsheet, but it can look any way. That's what developers do, which I didn't know, and web designers. So like, the back end of Facebook might actually be a spreadsheet of likes and comments, but when you see Facebook and you use it, they've decided like on the right-hand panel goes here and on the left-hand panel here, and here's your photograph. So this is our translation, like a nervous system of the database, and it's only one of many. It's where we started with a circular, holonic, left circle, very colorful, right panel, more masculine. Russian dolls, like you're not going to see these holons spread out like Kumu right now. That's a different visualization of the data. So this is one user interface. And the third layer is application. What do you do with the UI and the database? Do you chat? Do you exchange resources? Do you do a budget together? Things like that. So you have some functions here, some applications like social networking, you might say. There's a little bit of voting. There's organizational framework like Glassfrog a little bit. You could basically do holacracy right now on this prototype because you can create circles within circles and roles. You can create your own ontologies. There's a synergy engine instead of a search engine. So you want to connect these pieces of data through synergy more than just searching for them, which I'll share more about if we have time. So those are some of the applications, and we've mishmashed them all together to create a proof of concept as a working space for our own learning about what we want to create. Definitely talked a lot there. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll play this.
Fractal database and a fractal interface. We use the word holon, holonic. A holon is a whole and a part simultaneously because we're into whole systems design and implementation and perception. So this is obviously, here you've got what I would call my sovereign identity. It's my sort of main profile. It's called my me whole.
Sorry, I guess I've already said a lot of this, but we'll show it anyway. It's only 2 minutes.
Holon. We're going to be building this on Holochain to start with. This is on a centralized server right now, so it's not decentralized or distributed. Like I said, proof of concept. And I would consider this to be my sovereign identity on Holochain. So they have a solution for that. And I'm just going to go and show you. So this is one of my avatars called Cryptopoet. And then I'm just going to show you as far as fractal DAOs. And here, what an intention to co-create with the DAO stack ecosystem. And what I like about what we have going on here is the fractal database and fractal interface. So what I did was I created a bunch of DAOs that I saw on the Alchemy page. And here we've got the main Genesis Alpha DAO. So you see when you come into the Genesis DAO, on the left here on the palette, you're able to create new DAOs just by doing this. Drag and drop, right? Creates a new DAO. Test. Now you've got basically a new DAO. And within this DAO, you can create more DAOs. And basically every me, the first thing I showed you is really a personal DAO, since we're all DAOs in a sense. So I would think you guys might be able to apply your imaginations to this kind of thing. This palette here on the left is basically the ontology for a specific community or a specific DAO or a specific field. And it's also a way to sort of gamify or create a mechanism for steps you want people to take. So they might only be able to map an intention. And once they do that, they have to map a vision. And then once they do that, maybe they can map a DAO and create a DAO.
Okay, so what I'm getting at there is you don't, when I say you just create a DAO by dropping it, you can't do that technologically. But in the future, with smart contracts and those things, and people want to create new DAOs, it'll be easy as drop and drag. Create the new DAO. When you drop and drag that DAO, it has a back-end thing that has a template, and it's already done half the work for you. And you can interact all these DAOs, just create new DAOs. So it's going to be much easier in the future. People are not going to have to know what they need to know right now. It's very difficult right now for me, even in the blockchain space, to understand a lot of stuff and use it. A lot has been over-promised and under-delivered as far as I'm concerned with blockchain technologies. Let's see. And then I have this other video, which is nice. It's only 3 minutes as well. The context for this is our friends Jay and Karen have something called X the Game, which is a tool for manifestation and co-creation. It involves these game cards and circles of people going through the process. So this is something I created for them when they were talking to the Zappos company at some point. They were going to try to bring their game into as an organizational tool. But I think this is also a helpful little video as well. It's not very long. It's just taking a second. This will show you how you can gamify or play a game, or how you can join an intention like project management. Then you can use your imagination. And if anyone's wondering, like, can you do this or can you do that? The answer will always be yes. All of us as a collective are going to co-create all the things we need together. So if it's not, it wasn't our job to really create a final product. It's too big, too massive, too complicated, too big to actually deliver what we're trying to deliver with a couple people. So we hope that within the next couple months, we're going to release some info and invitation to co-create and a structure for that and a process, and hopefully that for us it takes off. So I'm going to hit play.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Brett, and I'm one of the co-founding stewards of the new map community and the technological innovations being developed here. So this is going to be a very tip of the iceberg introduction to what X the Game looks like on our application, which is basically a new internet, a new cybersphere, a new web. There's a lot more to the story. We'd be glad to share with you at any time. For now, I'm just going to jump right in and just show you a quick example of what we did the other day with the experience team. So the first thing we did was we mapped me hold-ons for the 4 team members. This is your universal profile on NewMap. The next thing we did was we created a game by simply dragging and dropping a game in here like this. And then we started creating a group intention, which was to actualize the highest synergy of X the Game and Zappos. You can see my little profile hold on here, my wife's hold on here. This is because in NewMap you can join an intention like joining a team. So this is saying, yes, we want to co-create, yes, we're part of this intention. Then we went and we created these profile hold-ons, which happens very quickly in NewMap. It's just a keyboard function. You'll see these are our different roles here. And inside each of our roles, we had a comment. And in NewMap, you can leave a comment and tag it as an intention or a skill or resource or anything that your community or team decides are key tags or key categories. So what we did was Josh had a personal intention to evoke the greatest depth from each player, and then we hit link it, and it goes right into his role hold on. For example, then Josh drew a card from X the Game, and he got the Destiny dice. And we talked about this, and I left a comment here. And again, that could be linked in here to create a story to show the progression of how people are interacting. So once we went through this process and everyone created a role and everyone shared a personal intention and then drew a card from the game, and we all would go around in a circle and discuss this and leave comments. Anyone can leave a comment here. It's just me doing it today. And what we did was we drew 3 cards. We drew a life card, a relate card, and a challenge card. And
So I'm just going to stop it there because it's actually not necessary to go for it. I just wanted to show a different look, different hold on and what was going on in there. I'm going to leave it there with text and videos. If people are interested, they can either, I don't know if you have yet a Radical Collective Intelligence Facebook, Slack, whatever you might use, or forum, or you can message Jamen. I'll put together a document that has links to all these things for further information kind of stuff, and people are more than welcome to check that out. The last thing I'll add in, as you saw on the right side, the comments and co-creations, someone can tag the hold on type they leave. So it's like they're commenting an intention, they're commenting a resource, or they're commenting with a question. The amazing, really evolutionary thing there, the simple thing that I want to just build, is that you're networking in a sense, just like you would on Facebook or Twitter, but every comment is a hold on. It's a piece of information in and of itself. So therefore it can be copied or linked somewhere else, and it can have its own thread of conversation. So you can see how like a mycelial viral conversation can happen. Or, in one thread, I see someone has a resource of a house in the Bahamas for the summer. And in another conversation, I know someone's looking for somewhere to stay. And I just say, wait a second. And I just link it. And it'll be easier to do that than it is in the prototype because it's built that way. I mean, in the prototype, it doesn't work great. But in the we created with AI, as Jameson said and all that, we're just going to say, literally talk to it and say, wait a second, didn't I see something the other day? I think Nolan was talking about intention to start a community in Virginia, and it'll pop up and then say, link it. Wait, I know someone's Sherry. Yeah, link it. And it'll just all just get done basically by voice and the way, because the hold-ons are kind of like synapses. It's kind of like how our brain categorizes things. People were trying to build a semantic web was a big thing. And this is more like a semantic webby type of situation. I usually give the caveat, which I didn't. I'm not a deep technologist, so I'm a storyteller and as good as I'm decent, but I'm just like, I wouldn't be able to answer super deep questions about nodes and graphs and, and things like that, or smart contracts, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so the comments and co-creation, just being able to do that is super awesome, because you're like networking, but you're creating your profile. So like, I'm always sharing with people, oh, I know someone that can help with that. I know someone that can help with that, or I used to do this, or I'm good at that. And I tag it, I comment, and then I could say, add add this to my personal profile. So I'm building my profile in an organic way, instead of sitting in front of the computer thinking, oh my God, what are all my skills? What are my passions? Like everyone always does. They're like, oh, I don't know what my skills are. But if you just did it naturally over a year, and you were helping people naturally, and you were just expressing yourself, it would be easy to build your profile and have people comment on it and give them votes, like LinkedIn, and say, hey, yeah, this person is good at that. Or I did work with this person, et cetera, et cetera. So there's also a synergy button I didn't show you, but the smallest use case, which is fun, is like, I might be looking at Jamin's passion for 60s rock and roll, and then I hit the synergize button, and on the right side, the search will bring up all of these different hold on types: intentions, visions, resources, skills. So instead of just bringing up a list of things that sort of relate to 60s rock and roll, and Jamen, like when you do a search, just getting a bunch of websites that are also obviously on the first page because of money and SEO and all that, like that's a whole nother story. But it's like on the right side, it's gonna be like, oh, someone also has a passion for the Doors. Someone has a skill for playing 60s surfer music. So like in a second, you could create what we call like a co-creative hold on, and just start inviting people. Hey, did you want to co-create or something? Like I saw that it's just the lightest level of stuff we've done, but you use your imagination and be like, like imagine when that's like working smoothly and the AI is involved. And yeah, so just little things like that, this holonic database. And I don't even know if it is a holonic database in the most purest sense, like I said, like the scientific definition of holons. It's just that every entry is a piece of information that can be shared, and it's in many places at once. In the future, you'll be able to create a forked version of something that you change or add on to. But the first use case, which is amazing, people always understand, like layman people, and I'm generally a layman's person, I've learned all this stuff, is right now, if let's use something simple, like you got a new job and you got a new skill, and let's say you share that skill on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and 4 other social networks. If you wanted to, you'd have to go into every single one of those databases, log in, and change the fact that you just got a new skill. Like that's crazy. That's craziness to me. So if you have a skill hold on in NewMap in your avatar that says, I'm good at typing, I type 30 words a minute, and now it's 50 words a minute, you just change it in your home profile, and anywhere you've ever shared that you have the skill, it's the same hold on. So it's just literally automatically updating because it's the same piece of information. But that's also like super awesome and super agile here, because what we're talking about is being more efficient with our time and optimal and co-creative. And to me, this is where the modern internet web 2.0 is not meeting the needs of the synarchy, as Dharmendra, and not everyone will get that, but it's the first 5,000, 10,000 people on a working new map to me that are the most interesting. Like I'm personally not worried about my mom and dad yet getting it. I'm not personally yet worried about all of our parents and brothers and sisters easily getting it. I'm personally curious about getting a working version that 10,000 people can use. Speaking of the 1, 2, 3, 10,000, because if we can nail that version and not have it buggy and have it do the things we want it to do, there's going to be light speed of co-creative, radical collective intelligence. Yeah. All right. Was it Jubilee and then Dharmendra, I think?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So in all this amazingness, I missed the name of the actual thing because it wasn't on the screen. What is the name of this hold on generating social media platform amazingness?
Well, its original name is NewMap, NOOMAP, which is based on the idea of the noosphere. What you missed is like we might change the names and stuff, like, and it's all it's a prototype, a proof of concept. So, and the current prototype, which was open to the public, is down. As a note, I shared it the other call. I might as well just share it to be honest and vulnerable. Like we need our next round of resources and funding from somewhere, like our little group. And I got tired of putting it on my credit card, and then my credit card's getting deeper, and I was paying $70 a month, which is not a lot. I don't really care, but I wanted to make a statement to the universe. Like, I'm done with this. I'm done with like, why am I paying for this? Like, our whole team could use money. We need health concerns. Like, I mean, we need to up our game there, and we need a team because there's only one person that could fix it, Chris, when it went down. And he's doing R&D, and he really doesn't like to be tied down to fixing things. It's not his archetype, and it's not fair to him. It felt not fair to me to not have someone to fix it, but it wasn't fair to him to be the one to fix it technically, because it was never his dream to be like fixing something when it breaks. Really, he's a visionary artist, and he brings through the big pieces, like the big architecture and the big vision. So it's actually, for the first time in 3 years, ironically, meeting Jamen and all of you, this is the first time in 3 years I've had to try to share and explain using videos and screen grabs. I normally would have just got on the prototype and been flipping through it and showing everything. So it's been an interesting week for me also on an interpersonal level of like my own fears and interesting, like, oh, why did this happen now and what's going on, and some of the old stuff around resources, because it's all a learning curve and etc. So it's called New Map Jubilee. It's not right now available because it's just offline, and I can't get it back on yet. And it might change names, and it's one piece of what we're doing in a sense.
Gotcha. And so you probably won't be able to answer my second question then, which is when can I use it if it's a prototype? How long? So I guess the better question is how much money do you need to get to how much time do we need? How much money for the time?
I can't answer all the questions. My biggest, I mean, literally to get it back on, I was on Amazon EC2 cloud servers. It was $70 a month. So obviously I could ask a bunch of people, can you guys help me out? I'll put in $10 a month so we can have it up, for the next 6 months, and I'm not paying on my credit card. This was probably the right community that would have all found a way to help me do that so we could all play with it. The other big issue is, even if I get it back up tomorrow, if it crashes, then Chris is not around to fix it, and we're going through this restructuring in our organization and getting Chris more out of that space, then like it's just down, and like there's no one. So the other piece is, we need, as a community, as a collective, I want to find 1 or 2 people that can learn the code either straight from Chris or just because they're also gifted. Like, they learn the code. It's not completely open source right now, but we would make an agreement with the community or those people that they're doing it on behalf of the community, and they're not to share it maybe until we're ready to figure out some stuff. So a couple people that might be able to figure it out. I don't know if they'll figure it out, to be honest, because when coders create code like this, it's called spaghetti code. And like it's intuitive to the guy who created it, but not always easy for the persons that have to take it over. So there might need to be a process. So like the whole project itself is the same as any other big tech projects, millions of dollars necessary. But I think, like, speaking more practically maybe, or realistically, like beyond the $100 level, like a couple $100,000 would mean me and my wife can settle somewhere, stop focusing on trying to get funding some of the time, get a couple of people that are devoted to learning the code, being able to fix that code, and then also being able to create the next better prototype version of it. It doesn't have to go from prototype to even beta, really, like an old-fashioned technology project. It just needs to get back online with someone who can fix it if it crashes, and then I would want to start tweaking it, and we would want one UI person, a couple UI and some back end and front end, and it's JavaScript. This version is JavaScript, like code that people are used to. Eventually we'll build it on Holochain, and I don't know if that's right away or what, but so the long-winded answer is like a couple $100 and some awesome coders, or like to get that back online, who can gift their time and don't just drop out and disappear, because that's a problem with volunteer and gifting. That's possible. Like, we're open to that, but I wouldn't never be able to guarantee under those conditions, compared to like we've got some funding and we've sort of hired a couple people to be responsible for that. So that's sorry, I'm long-winded, but yeah, that's the state of that. Wait, one more thing. I do have an offline version. One of our friends was working on, so Jamen, an offline version called Electron. Now, it's severely different and limited because it's not real time. So if I create a map on the offline version, I have to export that holarchy. I could send it to Jamen, he imports it, he could see it, I think, change it, and we could kind of work together, which might be fun and all that, and it would work, but it doesn't update in real time, and it's not multiple people, working. The beautiful thing about the online version is you could have 50 people in a Holon at once mapping. Like, it's amazing when you ask people to map problems and solutions in a collective space, and there's a big screen, and you see like collective intelligence, Jamin, like you see the holon start lighting up and people are mapping and mapping and mapping, and there's this dot that circles when someone's in a holon, this pink dot circles around, so you know how many people, you get a sense of how many people are in that one holon or jumping from holon to holon. It's actually a visceral experience and a community experience, by the way, with Melissa. The holons move one by one with your fingers. Like I have a touch laptop. So if we had a circular touch table and 4 people around it, they could actually move their own holons in their own space and like kind of throw them over if they wanted to. So it is actually very, because we're trying to get off laptops anyway. I mean, the future is AR, wearables, you know, projections. I don't want to be on a phone or laptop anymore myself. So that's really the next step, is like, why are we even on laptops? But yeah, so that's
Sounds-
so I can send anybody the offline version. It just has an agreement, like it's a agreement pops up to you. Are you cool with using this? And we're not responsible, and please don't share the code with other people or something. And you can check it out.
That's amazing. I would love to get my hands on that. Although I'm also kind of a technophobe who is creating a technology cooperative that we can like create all the solutions from the ground up. But why reinvent the wheel when things are already being done? Yeah. There are like dozens of people working on collaboration platforms. This one seems to be, in my mind, the most futuristic one as far as like, how do we think outside the box, not redo what Facebook and Twitter are doing, but do it in a different way. Like in an hour, we have our idea cafe for our meta project, which is a lot of technology problems have all these same problems that you're talking about, right? How do you find the people? How do you find the money? How do you find, and they're amazing projects, but either they don't get off the ground, or once they do get off the ground, they don't have the people to be involved in it. And that's a lot of risk that the individual person takes on. So we're bringing together the like owners of all of those projects to be able to work on solutions that we all can kind of get behind, right? That are like, okay, well, trust, financing, marketing, people are what we all need. So how can we get like one pot of that so that we can figure out how to distribute that, and how to work on that. So, and with that, also we're doing solution raisings on Saturday, which we're talking about food and coming up with internet.
So the bigger innovation to me, in a way, despite how awesome I believe what we're doing is technologically, which I'll share because you might not have been here at Jubilee, is the other parts of our platform, our architecture, social architecture and processes. So what we call the process of getting clear on how people co-create, what they share, under what conditions, how do they work in synergy but still be autonomous. We call that hollow sourcing, to use the word hollow. So it's a framework for organizational, that's what the first app we actually want to build is, the way for you to log on, join that overall collective you're talking about, make present and clear what you have, what you're looking for, what you're sharing. And then if you want to co-create or collaborate, we make a difference between those words, which I'll explain later another time. But you know, if you want to do that, there's a process and a way to make sure everyone is satisfied, because we've learned a lot about clarity and agreements through our travels, and sharing governance and sharing money and all these things. And people are not, we need to up our games, all of us, on all levels, in my opinion. So, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but that's really a bigger part almost of what we've been doing, is creating that UFO I was talking about, this unified fractal organism that allows us to somehow share space and share our IP. We have something called the Mother Fund because we like to biomimicry. The Mother Fund is really the API. So we want philanthropists and people to put money and resources into the Mother Fund. And the Mother Fund distributes money and resources to all of the collective according to algorithms that not just designed by 3 people, but let's just say you can trust that it'll be a collective thing, not just 3 people deciding. But let's just say there's algorithms, you know, based on energetics, Chinese medicine, fairness, and all these kind of things, cooperative thinking, synergistic thinking, and autonomous thinking, that basically like, oh, there's a quest here, there's a quest here. This quest to get Brett working with Jubilee's project needs funding. And like the system
those are the
has
exact same problems, that we're working on too, except that we don't have, we're not looking to make the platform, we're more looking to do that through Zoom, through conversations, so that can kind of emerge from the ground up. And anyone with a project of any kind is welcome to come, including like, if that project becomes the thing that we then all jump onto, awesome. Or, you know, like, how much do you own it? How much are you willing to give it up to the collective and dealing with it on an individual basis? But I don't want to take up too much time. I know Dharmendra wants to speak. I would love to chat with you outside of this, because I know you only have 2 hours for this, and I will reach out to you.
Thank you, Jubilee, for seeing that. What I wanted to share, Brett, which is really interesting, in seeing all your diagrams and your holons and all this stuff, is through accelerated collective evolution, I've discovered this kind of nesting sequence that happens with holons naturally in our actual spiritual body, what we are in a bigger picture, right? And so there's this term, I'm going to throw some big terms out right now because I want to catch some future space and bring it into future now, which is a fun thing to do through accelerated collective evolution, and just buzz everybody's brain cells and nervous system and all that stuff, because that's what I can do. So anyway, at the biggest omega sphere level, at the biggest stretch of our actual, I guess you can call it monadic body, that's a fun word to use, we're literally like 200 feet around, and we are literally a conscious entity there. And what we actually can do, that's our literal voyaging spaceship, that we can actually do what I call macro-dimensional voyaging. And you can pull in through this nesting process different future nows of different kinds of cosmic intelligence, depending on what you're writing through your belly, through your being, through the filaments of light. And this is all real stuff. This is very scientific description of very advanced meditative practices. And so I see that in upping our game and wanting to accelerate this into now as quickly as possible, and borrowing from your holonic things, is I think, I'll probably create some sessions where we can start to open up this macro-dimensional voyaging and start to tune into, because what we're working with at that multi-dimensional self level, at the biggest expanse of our omega sphere, is what you're all familiar with, the periodic table of the elements, right? Well, this comes through the Sufi transmissions, the periodic table of the angels. I'll say it again, the periodic table of the angels. There's 144 different dimensions of consciousness, which we have access to, as long as there's somebody who's actually opened that space up and broken through the veil of life and death, which happened in a mystical death and rebirth 26 years ago to me. So I'm not going to focus on that, because I don't care about that. What I care about is the collective getting into this and doing it too. I don't really care about being up on a stage and sprouting, truisms and things. I care about everybody jumping into this and being able to actualize it. That's what I've been working with Jamen, and that's why this whole thing's exploded, because I know how this stuff works, even if I don't talk about it. So in that nesting process, as it stacks down through the bodies, you get to the crystal palace level. And that's a personal interaction space where you're relating. That's the genius or gift level, however you want to call it. The omega sphere is the siddha level. And so I'm really wanting to share that and what naturally occurs as we start to train is people's siddhas start to come out, and they start to find their connection to it, whether it's through their gift of music or their gift of spirituality or their gift of organizing and strategizing, whatever it is. And that's their entryway into all the siddhas. And eventually there's this continuous process of enlightenment, of lightening up. And in the lightening up and unburdening of all the thought coverings and the emotional traumas and the physical dis-ease, we start to use our three centers for a whole different process. And we tune in the omega sphere and that crystal palace, where we're interacting together relationship-wise and sharing our gifts and just doing like we're doing now. We're just snowballing. It just keeps snowballing, especially since in the last week or two, it's really taken off. And then finally, you get into your personal space where you work on your own inner shadows. And that there's a place called the Heart of Transformation in there, the smallest sphere, but it's like a Buckminster Fuller vector equilibrium, the 14-sided with the 8 triangles and the 4 squares all put together. And you can stick a double tetrahedron through the triangles, if you know what I'm talking about. But down there in that level where you're absolutely stable and nothing can touch you, and you can transform anything that comes in that's a challenge or an obscurity or something, a problem you're working on, you can bring it into that space and transform it. And in a place like this where we have all these different people and so many who may have worked through certain shadows, you get that to come in. That's why I say our hearts are all linked through that heart of transformation. And so if somebody's working through a shadow, bam, in a space this big with this many people, can transform that in an instant, and that can all of a sudden be surrounded in our love, so that they catch that love and transform it instantly into their crystal palace, into that Metatron's cube, which is a 3-dimensional double tetrahedron, one on top of the other, the Merkaba. And that's literally what we start to relate to. This is all real stuff that I've learned, seen, and worked with people for 26 years now. And it's fascinating when it gets out to that pentagonal dodecahedral structure of the omega sphere, and you start to learn to move that and learn to voyage. And we start to get into that space. It's insane. And I can't explain why that creates the synchronicities it does and opens all this up, that in 4 months, Jamen and I went from 0 to, and we're almost hitting it light speed now. We're just like, holy, we're just about to blow. And I see it with you coming into this, Brett. You're like, that's why I say the reconciling. So I hope you're catching a lot of what I'm throwing in here. I'm opening a sitta space, and I'm saying, take a look at this. This is which one is it? It's transparency, the 59th sitta. 59th gate sitter. This is transparency. This is where you get to see what normally most people don't get to see unless they die. And even then, they may just go unconscious until they wake up wherever they went. But this is the process that happens in between. This is what shows you what you're made up of and how we can be super creators now, and how we can start to bring all this in a very real. Because I've just literally creamed my spiritual genes listening to you through this whole process. Like, holy cow, let's go. I mean, and Jamen knows exactly what I'm talking about, because same thing happened with me and him meeting. It's just insane. But I just wanted to throw that in because I know we're getting toward the end of your thing and I don't want to hog up all the space, but I want to give you a little taste of how I can start to play with ideologies and frameworks and perception and experience and manifesting, sensations in your body that give you signals that this is actually real and not just some boring conversation. So thank you.
Right on. That's what Barbara Marx Hubbard calls suprasex, vocational arousal, the fusing of genes instead of from procreation to co-creation, which was always one of our favorites.
I call it cosmic orgasm.
Yeah. All right. Well, the 2 hours are up. Jamen, everyone's, thank you so much for all of the listening and kindness and patience. What a amazing space I've landed myself in. Dylan popped in. Thanks to Dylan Howard for inviting me. Jamen and Nolan, you crazy biatches, 24 hours live. We did this once at our Synergy Hub thing, by the way. It took us like 3 weeks to prepare for the 124-hour thing, and after it, everyone was burnt for like 2 months. So props to you all who are responsible for being online for 24 hours. I'm actually gonna come back in and out as much as I can. Just a million thanks for the invitation, for the love, for the sharing, for the patience. I'm really, really, really happy and thankful to all of you. Really am. I really am.
Thank you so much, Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Brett.
It's top of the hour. Silas, Dr. Silas Rao has just joined us. I'll introduce him in a couple of minutes. But just to wrap up here, I am quite confident I speak for everyone here and everyone watching and everyone not here. Brett, we love you with our giant holonic collective heart. We love you. Just look around you. Look at all the positive affirmations. We love you. And you know what? Just like with Dr. Silas Rao, who's here every week for like 7 or 8 weeks in a row, minus 1 week when he's traveling or something like that. I would like to extend an invitation to you, Brett, to, number one, make this your home. Feel very much at home here. Number two, come back again and again and again. We can get you on a regular schedule. We can have the Brett's Holonic Universe hour or 2 hours or whatever, literally every week. The way it feels to me right now, we're all just getting to know each other. Getting to know you, as my mom would sing. We're all getting to know each other. So, and that takes time. And it takes repetition. It takes, we need a week just to digest what you've put on the table and then come back for the second course. So really, please keep coming and we can coordinate on timing and calendar and all those details. Not a big deal at all. And I'm just so excited to see and participate in your software platform rebirthing so that we can all use it and meet there as well. So exciting. Anyway, I want to welcome everyone who's just arrived. Dr. Silas Rao, who's our next speaker, who will be leading for the next 2 hours. Benjamin and Suzanne, Dylan. Ray's been hanging with us for a while. Haven't heard your voice yet. Love to hear from you. Love to hear from everyone. Everyone, feel free to come and go as you please. This is your house. Come and hang with us. And we're going to, now I'd like to introduce a dear friend and mentor and partner, Dr. Silas Rao, who is the leader of Vegan World 2026 within Climate Healers. This is the second part of a 7-part series that Silas is leading for us on how not to go extinct. That's a skill we'd all like to acquire. It's a collective skill, cannot be practiced alone, must be practiced collectively. And the title of today's talk that Silas is going to deliver is called Make America Brave Again. But before, I just want to see, Brett, do you have anything finally you'd like to add on before we shift gears from Brett's Holonic universe to how not to go extinct? Anyway, Brett's muted. You may be transitioning. That's totally cool. We're just going to do a quick technical thing here. And Brett, just jump in if you have anything final to add. Otherwise, let's get ready. And I'll introduce Silas again in a moment.